Hey folks, this is Vint with Dan's Gaming Addiction, and today we're going to quickly check out One Deck Galaxy. This is a digital adaptation of a popular board game, one that I have covered before on my channel. It is in early access, so everything that you're about to see here is subject to change. For example, not all of the adversaries that you face in this game are in the digital version. My board game / card game version has more adversaries than this. So what is the game about? Well, it's like One Deck Dungeon in the sense that you're going to pick a character. In this case, you're picking both a home world and a society, and you're going to be facing off against some kind of adversary that you have to beat. And there's a lot of dice rolling in this game. And if you want to see something similar to this, go check out my videos on One Deck Dungeon. You can either play it as a single-player game or as a two-player game, just like the tabletop version. If you're going to play single-player, just pick one home world and one society. Each homeworld has a unique ability on it, and each society has different ways it can level up as you play. One thing I will say right out of the gate, this game is confusing. The rulebook, at least for the tabletop version, was structured in a way where I had to read it several times to kind of understand what was going on, and some of the concepts were not well explained, and that kind of bled over here into the digital version of the game. There were times where I was scratching my head going, okay, so what am I supposed to do? Now, to the game's credit, there is a manual button, like a rulebook, view rulebook button that you can click on in the main menu, but you cannot access that in-game. Like, if you're in the middle of something and you've clicked the tooltips to no longer, be visible, then you're screwed. You have to, Alt-Tab, find the rulebook online, PDF, whatever. So I think that there needs to be access to the rulebook at all times. And I'm not talking click a link and open up a separate web page and look at the rulebook that way. I'm talking about a implemented in-game rulebook that you can look at so you're not breaking the immersion trying to find stuff. That's my opinion on it. So I feel like the developers have the same issue with the tabletop as the digital. It's a little confusing if you don't know, if you haven't played it before. And unfortunately, I don't have my training bot. I actually invented a training bot adversary to play against so I can get acclimated to the game at a less stressful pace. I can't do that here in the digital version because you're stuck with the 3 adversaries that the game gives you. The easiest one is called Hungry Nebula, okay? And the way this game typically works is that you've got a deck of cards, and these cards are multi-purpose. In the middle of the screen, there are 4 cards, locations that come up, and you're going to be rolling dice trying to fill those slots. So if it says a blue 15 or a blue 5, then you have to drag blue dice over to those spots in order to fill it. You can sacrifice 2 dice and turn it into a wild black die at the lower value. So if you sacrifice a 6 and a 5, that will turn into a black 5. And that black 5 can be used anywhere. So there are ways to get around bad dice rolls. You can also spend spaceships as you earn them in order to increase pips or decrease pips on dice. You can also spend research points that you earn in order to gain black wild dice, which is kind of nice. And like I said earlier, your society is going to have special abilities. In the case of the Plumplin botanists, you can move influence around, which I'll explain later. You can store dice. As you gain cards in the array, you'll gain even more abilities, assuming you use them for those abilities. So, getting back to the middle of the screen here, on the top left of each of these cards is an influence tracker. And if you fulfill the needs of the boxes, like the number boxes, then you'll earn influence for that card. If the card reaches a threshold, in the case of the Starburger in the upper left there, it needs 0 out of 8 influence. So you may not gain that card this turn, but you have to keep satisfying these boxes until you manage to reach that threshold. Once you do, you can either take the card as extra dice to roll of a particular color. On the left-hand side of a card are shapes like a moon or a blue circle, whatever. If you take it as that bonus, you gain those dice. You get to roll extra dice. If you take it for the bottom effect, it adds to your text on the bottom left. So as you gain cards from the center, you can either gain extra dice or gain it as a bonus ability. And you'll also see symbols on these cards, like crystals, fuel, water, and plants. You gain those regardless. And they will have an effect on cards as you acquire them as well. So you are going to be, it's sort of like an engine builder. You start with, a limited number of dice, and then you have to like sort of grow by gaining these cards, get more dice, roll more dice, and also gain more text as well. And it's fun to sometimes choose between which cards to get for dice and which cards to get for text. That's just the tip of the iceberg here. During the adversary phase, which is the first phase of the game, the adversary will gain its own threat. And that's bad. Gaining threat, the adversary is going to gain threat every single turn, and that's bad. When it reaches a threshold, even more bad things happen. And then typically you want to just roll dice and trying to sort of assign them out. Now, your civilization can also level up from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, and as it does so, its abilities get better. Your ultimate goal is to assign enough dice to the Hungry Nebula, or at least the adversary mat. In addition to the cards in the middle of the table, there's an adversary mat, and you have to get through several tiers of that. Of those boxes in order to beat the Hungry Nebula. You lose if it outpaces you. You lose in a number of different ways. If you run out of cards, for example, you have to reshuffle your discard pile. Do that enough, and you haven't leveled up your civilization enough to keep up with that, the number of times you've reshuffled, then you lose. So the AI can outpace you in one of several ways, and you have to stay on top of it and try and keep sort of chipping away at his card. He's also got something called a swell effect. Each adversary has a different swell effect, and every turn you have to decide, at least in the case of the Hungry Nebula, which ones to be applied against you. The other adversaries work a little bit differently than Hungry Nebula. In the case of the Hungry Nebula, the swell effects are put aside. You choose which ones to take effect every turn. But those go away over time, making it more deadly. And yeah, it's hard to explain in the matter of 9 minutes or 10 minutes, however long this video ends up being. On your side, you've got, again, ships to modify dice. You've got research, which allows you to study locations and launch probes that help you gain research. This game is just... It's fun to play. It's just extremely overwhelming to the first-time player. I enjoyed my experience with this game. I'm kind of bummed that I can't import my own adversary. I wish I could create my own adversary. I want to create the training bot that I created for the tabletop version so I can have a more fun time. There's no progression in this game like in One Deck Dungeon. Unfortunately, like there's no like upgrade system, which is unfortunate. In One Deck Dungeon, the classes that you play as can be upgraded, and you get more powerful with every continuous run. Here, that's not the case, which is kind of unfortunate. So I wish I could create my own adversaries. I wish I could create my own, I wish I could create my own societies and stuff like that. The UI can be troublesome at times. Sometimes I have a hard time figuring out, okay, how do I interact with the interface to do what I want to do? Is the game going to let me do this? No, why not? Just like, I feel like the UI is just not always giving me accurate information, like in terms of like what I can do next or why things are happening the way they are happening. It's just, I feel like there needs to be a better, it's just not very intuitive, I guess is what I'm saying. I drew on my experience from playing the tabletop game, and had I not done so, I would have been lost trying to play this game, to be honest with you, because there's a lot of things going on that sort of have to click in order for you to you can't strategize if you don't know what's going on, right? So yeah, I recommend this, but I have to just add a word of warning. The rulebook isn't like implemented in game for you to look at any time. I recommend bringing up a PDF rulebook. Be prepared to spend some time with this game to learn the UI and the little nitty-gritty rules as you go around. But it's still a fun game. I enjoy it. If you enjoyed One Deck Dungeon, you'll enjoy this one too. It's just the learning curve, I think, is a little bit higher. I think that's due in part due to bad instruction availability from the developer. But I still recommend it. But again, early access. Here's hoping they add more content in the future and make things a bit more user-friendly. This is Vince. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you all next time. Take care.